All right, welcome everyone. We are going to get started. We're really excited to have you joining our webinar today. I'm Lori Mackson from Mutually Human. Better yet, I'm joined today by my colleague Nav Lekhi. Nav is the Director of Intelligent Automation here at Mutually Human. So he'll be walking through the webinar today. But before we get started, I just want to give you a quick overview of Mutually Human. So we were founded in 2006. We are a full service design and development consultancy. We've worked with many organizations over the past many years to implement technology to achieve better business outcomes. So implement technology, that's obviously a big, broad term, but a few of the ways that we've helped many of our customers, one is new product development. So whether it's a startup or a large organization, we work with business stakeholders to go from an idea to implementation. So we bring a full service team there with product strategy, UX, UI design, and development to take that idea and vision and bring it into reality. Second way that we work with companies is digital transformation. Now, obviously, this is a big buzzword nowadays, but what that means for us is we work with organizations to implement custom software and/or intelligent automation to streamline and scale their process. A third way we work with organizations, some organizations have technology teams already in place. And so we have a lot of experience working side by side with those teams to help accomplish more. So whether it's additional bandwidth or additional expertise, we have a lot of experience working directly with technology teams at organizations. So we've touched a lot of different technology over the years. And a couple of our bread and butter really is web and mobile applications, intelligent automation, and systems integration. Couple webinar housekeeping items here. So as always, we will send out an email with a link to the recording. So we're recording this and you'll see that in a follow-up email. During the webinar, if you have any questions on the sidebar, you can add your questions. We'll be monitoring those, and at the end of the webinar, we'll take a peek at those and field some Q&A. When the webinar is done, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. It would be really helpful if you're able to do that. That just helps us to make sure that we're providing some valuable content now and in the future. And as a thank you for that, those of you that complete that survey will be entered into a drawing to win Amazon gift cards. So we'll be drawing for 3 Amazon gift cards. So with that, we'd like to transition into the exciting part of today. So like I mentioned, Nav Lekhi is here with me today. He is the Director of Intelligent Automation. Nav has been in the RPA industry for 5 years, and given the newness of RPA, 5 years is essentially a lifetime. Nav's really an expert in this field. We're really excited to have him be able to share some of this information here with you today. Nav has successfully worked with organizations to implement automation into their culture across many different industries, including logistics, banking, financial services, insurance, and workforce management. So with that, I'd love to hand it over to Nav, and we'll get started.
Cool. Hey, thanks, Lori, for the introduction. And before we get into it, I wanted to thank all of you for taking some time out of your busy schedules to join us today and learn more about robotic process automation and learn a little bit more about what Mutually Human does to help our clients with their automation journeys. So I'll start off with just a high-level agenda of some stuff I'll be covering during today's conversation. So first things first, we'll go over some high-level information about RPA, kind of what it is, what it's not. Some of you may be familiar with RPA, but it may be completely new to others. We'll also talk about Center of Excellence and how to set up your automation program for success using your core RPA A-Team and other best practices. Next, we'll go into the process of actually delivering production-ready automations, right? What needs to be done to build and deploy your RPA bots across your business and across other lines of business within your organization. And as a part of scaling up, we'll also talk about the road to citizen development. What is a citizen developer? And what a citizen development model can do for your business so that you have folks on the ground also delivering automations and really helping foster that culture of automation within your organizations. And lastly, I'll talk a little bit about Mutually Human and how we can help you in your automation journey. So with that, let's move on to the basics and let's get one thing out of the way. Robotic process automation does not mean building of physical robots. When I first tell people that I make bots for a living, they immediately assume that I'm just building a Terminator or C-3PO. And I will tell you that that's not the case, although I'm sure it would be entertaining to spend some time with Bender, the robot. But like I said, rest assured, there will be no robot take over the world anytime soon. So just wanted to give you guys a clear understanding that RPA is not actual physical robots. So that brings us to what RPA actually is, right? So robotic process automation is automation software that helps end repetitive manual tasks and helps make digital transformation a reality. So what does that mean? Well, tools, RPA tools, make it easy to build and deploy and manage software robots that emulate human actions interacting with different systems on a computer. So just like people, robots can do things and understand what's on a screen and complete the right keystrokes, navigate different systems, identify and extract data, and perform a wide range of actions. So what RPA tools do, we use tools like Automation Anywhere to build out these softwares that can then start performing your business processes much more efficiently and much more effectively as well. And it is still a relatively new technology, as Lori mentioned in the introduction. So, it's only really growing at scale at the enterprise level and only has grown at that level in the last few years. So, this is an exciting time to be learning about what RPA can do for your business and for your digital transformation objectives. So I mentioned Automation Anywhere, and Mutually Human has positioned itself as a strategic partner of Automation Anywhere. So the question is, why have we chosen Automation Anywhere over other industry-leading tools? Well, there's a few reasons. First being, Automation Anywhere is the only cloud-native web-based platform in the world. That makes it easy to build bots. It makes it easy to scale up your automations, and it makes scalability and that real digital transformation a reality. Automation Anywhere is also a Gartner Magic Quadrant leader. It's one of only a handful of RPA platforms in the world that have achieved that recognition. It's also one of the easiest tools to use out there. I've delivered bots and have led delivery teams using other tools, but with Automation Anywhere, especially their recently deployed Automation Anywhere 360 platform, its simplicity is the real strength, especially when you're considering the goal of creating a culture of automation and really creating an automation first mindset across your organization. Ease of use and ease of scaling up the technology is going to be key to your success. Another fun little fact, Automation Anywhere has helped deploy over 3 million bots in over 90 countries. So it really is one of the leading, if not the leading platform in the world when it comes to a robotic process automation. So I wanted to move over to some of the benefits of using RPA and implementing it within your organization. The most noticeable benefit being the speed and accuracy at which robots and software automations can complete tasks, right? Incorrect data entry is also another huge challenge for many businesses that rely on a lot of manually performed tasks. RPA can help alleviate errors in this case. Another benefit is greater productivity. Whereas humans have limitations on how much work they can do in a day, robots do not. I've been involved in projects where we've had our automations, execute key processes 24 hours a day. And as your volume scales, the ability for RPA to scale is also just as easy. We understand that certain processes see an overload of volume, especially certain times of the year. We see that a lot in the finance business processes, but RPA really allows you to scale up your solutions easily and effectively. And so that's another key benefit of the technology there, is just the high availability of your automations. cost savings and fast ROI, I think that's a no-brainer, right? These machines and robots are able to perform the same tasks in less time, and giving time back to your employees and resources to do more valued work, right? And so with that cost savings and with that time back, you're able to now save money and then also reallocate your resources to do more valuable work, down the line, hopefully contributing to more revenue. I talked about the improved employee morale is a huge kind of overlooked benefit many times. When you give back time to your employee, you make them feel, employees, you make them feel more valued. I've talked to so many folks when they first hear about RPA, they are a little, scared that automation may take over their job. But once we show them what RPA can do, they start to understand that RPA can complement the work that they do as opposed to take over. We're not trying to take anybody's job, but we do want to make them feel more valued. And RPA does a great job of giving time back to your people so they can focus on tasks. And a lot of times, those tasks can be external customer facing tasks, which helps improve customer experience. In the end, your business is going to be very dependent on how your customers feel valued, right? And how your customer experience is. So with faster turnaround times, with more effective, delivery of customer items, they're able to feel more valued, and that leads to a better experience, which leads to more business. Now I'm going to shift to a couple of examples of RPA in the real world. These are big organizations, and I just kind of wanted to take a second to share their success stories. The rest of the presentation, I'll be sharing some more success stories of projects that I've been involved in. So with Sprint, they're known as the 4th largest mobile operator in the world, and they started their automation journey in 2017 with just some really simple, kind of low complexity use cases. They initially implemented their proof of concept bots within the finance industry, and the proof of concept bot meaning the kind of first business process that you're taking a look at from an automation lens, because it is going to be a big change in your organization down the line when you start scaling up, right? You want to make sure that the new technology fits within your organization and your infrastructure stack. So Sprint successfully implemented some bots in finance, and as soon as they saw some success there, just not even a year later, they kicked off their company-wide Automation Anywhere program. They initially targeted 50 use cases, and they were able to get all those completed in just 6 months. So you can see the time saved and the success of their initial set of automations, and with that, those winning stories within the organization has led to additional use cases in their pipeline. Another example is Bancolombia. They are a large banking institution in Latin America and South America. They service 12 countries in that region. And so they kicked off with a pretty ambitious RPA program a couple years back, and they targeted both front and back end processes, customer-facing processes, internal processes, and they also were quick to use technologies outside of RPA, kind of the machine learning and more cognitive solutions that are out there as part of tools like Automation Anywhere. So they were able to really find a lot of success in terms of how much time they were able to get back. And as you can see, 51% increase in efficiency of service over time. That was directly related to a lot of their call center processes. So there's a huge, benefit there when it comes to attended automations. When we talk about automations, we talk about attended and unattended being the two main kinds of automations. So with the call centers there, Bancolombia was able to see improved customer experience. And I want you to kind of keep Bancolombia in mind because I will circle back around to what they achieved from an ROI standpoint. I quickly wanted to talk about an example of a project where I was one of the delivery leads, and talking about some more benefits of the tool, right? So, there was a process for a banking client of ours that they had manually needed to process by sending housing counselor lists of us in a certain zip code for people who had just closed a mortgage. So those customers, once they closed a mortgage, received a letter from the bank with a list of those home counselors in their particular zip code. So the problem began when COVID started. This particular client had a huge presence of service agents in India. And because folks over there and throughout much of the world were not able to work in offices, they had to move to remote work. But the problem was, given the bank security, they were not allowing their offshore resources to work from their homes. So that entire backlog of transactions came onshore and was put in the kind of pipeline of a lot of the folks in the US. And this is a big bank, so they had a huge backlog of processes, and they were missing SLAs. Customers were not happy, especially since this was an external customer-facing solution. So what we did is we built out a process and an automation that helped complete that process end to end. And it was a pretty linear process, but it was high priority as well, since it was external customer facing. And so we were able to alleviate all of that time and give that time back to the onshore resources to kind of do the more important work of dealing with customer service in the right way. So I just wanted to give an example of an automation that I directly worked on that saw a lot of these benefits as well. So next, I wanted to transition to what an automation journey looks like. How does one get to the point where they can expand and start getting users across the business to think about automation and really get to the high ROI numbers, right? So it all starts from the ground up. You gotta crawl before you can walk, right? So first things first is you gotta learn about what RPA is and what it is not. Hopefully for those who are unfamiliar with the technology, you guys have a little bit more of an understanding of what it can do now. But then you got to shift to your organization and really think about potential opportunities there. Like I said, in the finance space, we see a lot of opportunities, and I'll be kind of touching on some other opportunities within your business later on. But it really helps to understand what kind of processes you should be targeting. You want to make sure they're repetitive processes, high volume, make sure the data is structured, those kind of things. You're not touching a handful of systems through a certain process better. So those are usually the use cases that you want to select for your initial automations. All right, so once you've selected your initial automations, you want to pilot those out. And what that means is you want to build out a solution. You want to build out an automation. Once you build out your initial automation or automations, you want to measure the success, right? The only way you're going to be able to expand out across other lines of business and create that culture of automation and drive ROI is by expanding. And the only way to expand is to really have buy-in. And the only way you can really have buy-in is by measuring the success of your initial automations. So it's a really critical step. So moving on, one thing that's greatly overlooked when establishing an automation program and starting your automation journey is establishing an effective center of excellence. So what is a center of excellence? Well, as I say here, a COE, or Center of Excellence, provides a structural framework for managing the growth of RPA within an enterprise, and most importantly, maintains the benefit realized beyond the initial honeymoon period. The initial honeymoon period, in this case, being when the first bot is successfully deployed, or the first handful of bots are successfully deployed. You want to make sure that you're really setting yourself up to scale, and the way to do that is by building out your COE. The COE is usually a team, and that team is responsible for embedding and implementing the technology within the organization. So it really is enabling your organization to gather, assess, manage the key knowledge that's needed and the key capabilities that are needed to effectively implement RPA across your organization. So what are some key components of a center of excellence? And I'll just go over these at high level because I will be kind of going into detail for some of these in some later slides here. But at a high level, we'll start with governance. So what does governance do? It standardizes the rules and the guidelines that govern your bot development. You can't just have developers and business users go rogue in building up these automations. You need to make sure that they are following a strict guideline when delivering these bots, especially when you start involving IT teams and IT service management. Next is going to be people and culture. So that's usually the operational side of the house. You want to implement these bots, right? Because when you build out these automations and they're deployed in a production setting, that will lead to some structural changes. Job descriptions will change. Human roles will need to be updated. If you're giving employee X, 4 hours back of their day with bot development, you need to make sure now that they have that capacity back to perform updated tasks, right? Whether it's supporting and maintaining existing automations or looking for new automations within the organization, you'll need to make sure that your people are taken care of, and the way to do that is really focus on people and culture. Next, we'll talk about organization. This is where you'll define the roles and responsibilities, as well as the kind of overall structure of your center of excellence. And I'll be going over this in the very next slide. Processes is next. This is where your entire bot development lifecycle is defined. So everything from evaluating automation opportunities, performing that intake, all the way through deployment of these bots, and even into the support and maintenance side. And I have a slide where I kind of go into that as well. And then lastly is going to be selecting the right tools, right? And that's where technology comes into play. As I mentioned, we are key strategic partners with Automation Anywhere. So a big part of this technology side of the Center of Excellence is picking the right tools and picking the right add-on tools as needed. Outside of Automation Anywhere's core offering, which is just the ability to build out unattended and attended automations, there are other tools like Discovery Bot and IQ Bot, right? Discovery Bot really helps business users understand and identify what processes that they perform on a daily basis can be automated. And then IQ Bot is the document understanding side of the house for Automation Anywhere. It's where processes that rely on data, as an example, reading invoices and different formats of invoices from customers. You're able to use RPA and use tools like IQ Bot to extract key customer information where you can then plug and play, downstream in the remainder of your system, whether it's through SAP or any other tool that your organization uses. And another thing I wanted to note is just establishing a relationship with IT early on is going to be critical to your RPA success. And you want to make sure that RPA is properly integrated into the fabric or the existing fabric of your IT service management and even your configuration management database. Moving on, we will talk about your RPA COE types. So I'll start with centralized. This usually is composed of one team, usually built up of business and IT members that manage all aspects of RPA implementation. I'm talking about everything from the intake to bot delivery to support. That is the centralized model. And what we see is that many RPA programs start this way with a core RPA team. Once you build out your best practices within your organization, you can start scaling up and exploring other types after that. Next, we'll go all the way over to the right side and discuss the federated approach. This is where each business unit has established their own center of excellence guidelines. This model usually helps deliver bots quicker because you're giving power to the business unit, but scaling can be an issue. And then, creating a centralized guidelines in place is usually a problem once you're federated. If you start with a federated model and you start scaling that up, those are some key challenges there. So what we do notice is that the hybrid approach is probably the most successful at scale. Like I said, you want to start centralized. You really want to have your key governance in place. You want to understand what works, and then as you scale, you will notice what works well for your particular organization. Over time, you do want to start giving some power back to the business from an intake and delivery standpoint, and we're going to touch on that a little bit down the line when I talk about bot factories and citizen development. But it's important to keep in mind that your COE is still going to be the keeper of the governance and the standards. So that's really, I think, the key takeaway from this slide is making sure that on your automation journey and as you're building out your center of excellence, you really want to make sure that you have your guidelines and standards defined early, because they will shift over time too, but it's important to have them centralized so you can easily scale up from there. I did mention about your RPA A-Team, right? So at the core of your center of excellence is going to be your RPA A-Team. This team usually is made up of very clearly defined roles and responsibilities, and these are the folks that are in charge of implementing the technology. Now, maybe you're not ready to stand up a fully scaled team, and that's very common with a lot of the clients that we work with. I've delivered on projects with teams with each one of these roles that you see on the screen here, but I've also worked for a lot more clients who are just starting out with technology, right? They're just getting their feet wet and they're scaling the team up over time. So that leaves, okay, who do you actually need to start your automation journey? Well, at the base, you at least need your initial RPA sponsor or your RPA champion, that first person that really gets it, and that first person that can start finding opportunities and use cases and start delivering and start using tools like Automation Anywhere to start delivering that value. The sponsor it helps to have them be from the business side, right? And they can start establishing the technology as a priority, not within their line of business, but within the entire organization as well. So through this person, they'll be the ones really strategizing how bots will be delivered and building out the rest of their team, whether they do that in-house with their own resources or using a service partner. And that's something Mutually Human does as well, right? We help people build up their COEs. We help deliver bots. And so there's many different ways you can go, but it's really critical that your RPA A-Team has at least one sponsor ready to evangelize and ready to help deliver the benefits of automation at scale. So I mentioned governance as well, and I just wanted to go over some key points here. Like I said, governance provides the guidelines and templates for opportunity assessment, right, for design, for development, for deployment, and really manages that demand pipeline. So what are some deliverables of a governance team? Well, there's going to be a lot of templates, tools, and other documentation that's going to be related to your team. You're going to want to ensure that you have proper requirements documents in place. You're going to want to make sure that there's a proper code review checklist so everyone in your development side is following the same rules and principles, making it easier to support and maintain these bots in the future. You want to make sure you have the proper review process in place. What approvals and toll gates are you going to come across and should you come across in your RPA journey? Typically you have your sign off from the requirements team when the initial use case is identified, and then you want to make sure that your application and IT teams are also aware of how these bots will be working with those particular systems. And then before deploying to production, you also want to make sure the business has one final sign off on making sure that the bot is doing exactly what it should be doing. Then you'll come to the definition of what the deployment process looks like. How do you want to integrate the deployment of RPA bots and integrate it with your existing IT service management, right? A lot of organizations will deploy their own kind of traditional software, but RPA bots can also follow the same deployment process, kind of seamlessly integrating with your IT team and the rest of your organization. Credential management is another big one. How are you going to handle the security of passwords and usernames that are associated with building out your automations? And then the key deliverable I have highlighted here is the governance framework document. You can think of it, the governance framework document, as the constitution or your North Star for your RPA program. It'll cover all the components that I mentioned at a high level that a COE is made up of. So everything from how the roles and responsibilities are defined, how your security infrastructure will look, what the actual bot development lifecycle is, etc. So that governance framework document is kind of your first stop when you join the automation journey. Whether you're a new employee or you are an existing employee and you need to kind of look back at how you should be defining your coding standards, take a look back at the governance framework document. That's where everything should be. And keep in mind that this is an existing document, so it's something you want to review quarterly or every 6 months to make sure that as your COE matures, the document is maturing as well. So I also talked about the bot development lifecycle a couple times. I wanted to get this slide in front of you so you can see what the typical end-to-end lifecycle looks like for RPA development. It all starts with discovery. How are you, discovering those initial use cases for automation? Next, you go to solution design. Once you have your kind of initial ideas in the pipeline, you work with your RPA teams to really build out that flow design and build out what that solution looks like using your tool of choice. Tools like Automation Anywhere. For example, if you're automating a process that relies heavily on like a legacy AS400 system and other green screens, one way solution design is important is that, sure, you can go through the UI and log into an AS400 system and perform all the keystrokes there, or Automation Anywhere has a built-in terminal emulator where you can directly connect to your legacy system from the bot creator itself. And if you can do that, that's a way that you use the tool to perform your solution design. It's different than the current state design. So once you have your solution design in place, you go to automation development. This is where the developer, they have business sign off on the requirements, they're heads down, they're developing, they're unit testing, they're making sure that they're delivering the bot to meet the needs of your business process. Once they do their end-to-end testing, we want to get it back in front of that business, right? We want to make sure that the automation is doing exactly what it should be doing. So in this case, for UAT, we'll run it with test data or even production data in certain cases with certain processes that the business wants to see. And once they validate, then the bot is ready to be deployed into production. Once it's successfully deployed, you do maintenance. And even before maintenance, there is a period called hypercare, which is usually 1 or 2 weeks, depending on the process, where you're really just monitoring the bot. Once you deploy it and it runs for the first time, you want to keep a close eye on it. It's going to be touching production systems. It's going to be using production data. So it'll be really key to make sure that during that hypercare period that the bot is performing exactly as it should. Once you have your bot development lifecycle identified, you can start building, right? And I've already kind of gone through some of the process of what building out an automation looks like. But to cover some key points, you want to make sure that you're selecting the right processes. I've already mentioned that you want these processes to be high volume, repetitive, manual, simple to start. And they will get more complex. We've delivered some pretty complex automations with processes that involve a lot of decision making and some unstructured data. But it's your initial automations and the success of those initial bots will set the tone for how you scale up within your organization. Like I said, when we've worked with clients that have opted to build out their technical delivery capabilities in-house. But then there are also times where companies have used services from Mutually Human to deliver and drive those results initially while scaling up. I've already mentioned how success should be measured, right? Because once you start measuring success on your initial automations, that's when you can really go back across different lines of business and start finding opportunities elsewhere. And speaking of opportunities, opportunities everywhere. We see most of the success in the finance departments of organizations, due to the usually structured data. Usually the processes are pretty well defined. They're a lot more rigid, right? There's a lot of processing volume. So there's plenty of opportunities there, but there are opportunities within your entire organization. An example I would like to give is in the HR department. We had a client a few years ago that had in HR that they had two ways of finding applicants, right, to be hired. Either directly through their website, someone could apply, or they could apply through LinkedIn. The challenge this customer was facing was that for those applicants who applied into their LinkedIn system, they had to get data from that system and input it into their own portal. So a lot of the HR resources were manually scraping specific candidate information from the LinkedIn application and manually typing it into their web portal. We built a bot that automated that entire process for them, giving those HR resources time back to now spend more time conducting interviews, having conversations, finding the candidates who were, a great fit for their company and culture. And the only way they were able to do that was by utilizing RPA. And just want to throw a number out there. It said on average, like around 37 to 40% of everyone's day-to-day tasks are repetitive and automatable. Now, this is obviously going to depend on what your role is, but there's a lot of people out there performing a lot of manual tasks. Next, I want to talk about how to scale to enterprise. You have your first automations in place. You've successfully delivered some results, but scaling up from there does represent a new set of challenges and opportunities as well, right? So while the initial automations have been successfully implemented, it's going to be critical to keep your employees engaged. You want to make sure that you're continuing to automate, that you are continuing to build your pipeline across different lines of business. And one way to do that is by leveraging RPA champions. You want to leverage people within the company to evangelize what RPA can do. And some ways that I've done this in the past is just through workshops, lunch and learns. In certain cases, depending on your organization, social media I've seen be used to help build out this culture of automation. And you can get creative. Opportunity is everywhere. So you really have to, leverage people who believe in it to help implement it as well. Some other points, your bot development lifecycle will mature. You're going to learn things along the way that you maybe didn't know, and that's going to be key. As you mature your bot development lifecycle, you're going to be maturing your governance as well, right? Your COE is going to be growing. And then once you start kind of engaging employees at different business unit levels, and you start even, training up some folks to start building bots, that's when bot factories and regional bot development really begin to take shape. So what exactly is a bot factory? Well, as you scale, you are going to want to rely on regional bot development to take place so you can get automations into production quicker. This is going to be that shift I mentioned when I showed the organizational structures, right? The shift from a centralized COE to more of a hybrid. This will really help create that automation first mindset across your organization. You want to give the lines of business power to automate on their way to citizen development. You want to rely on the center of excellence to continue kind of being the guiding light of automation, but you want to make sure that you are building the engagement with RPA tools now at the business level. You want to make sure that people who maybe aren't technical, but who are becoming champions of automation, you want to make sure you're providing the right training and resources for them to keep championing automation and maybe even helping them provide value by delivering bots. Tools like Automation Anywhere, it is a low code, no code platform. Like I mentioned earlier on in this presentation, the simplicity of the tool is its strength. So business automations and business processes that can be automated at every level can be done so by folks who aren't very technical. And that kind of leads us to the road to citizen development. So as you can see on this slide, we've talked about how a global center of excellence helps maintain the governance and institutionalizes the standards and processes that are going to be guiding your automation efforts within your organization. And then we talked a little bit about how, after you establish your center of excellence, after you establish some success with your initial automations, you want to start scaling up across various business units, and you want to create these pockets of excellence and automation delivery within each business unit. And then finally, you want to get to that point where every employee is engaged with automation. They're able to build out their automations, they're able to run these bots, and they're able to do that using the standards identified with the first step in building out that global center of excellence. I've mentioned citizen development, and I'll just take a step back and kind of go over what a citizen development actually is. And it's typically someone who isn't technical, who is an employee that's at the business level that's able to build out these automations. They may not be able to go out and build the most complex processes initially, but you want to have them start with, you want to have them start with simpler tasks before you, get them to the point where they're confident enough to deliver on more complex processes. And that's really how you help build out this culture of automation. You want to make sure you're giving them the right resources, like I said, and the right training, because the more you upskill your folks at the ground level, the more they're going to champion automation, and the more your business will value because of it. So moving on, I talked about Bancolombia early on, and clearly they're a huge institution, 14 million clients, over 32,000 employees, and like I said, over 100 bots in production in year one. But I wanted to show, from a dollar standpoint, what their benefits were. They were able to reduce $19 million in provisioning costs, and because of that improved customer, improved customer service, they were able to give a lot of time back and form new revenue streams. They did a lot of things right. They implemented a successful governance model that was set to scale. They did the same thing with establishing that, the COE and governance being a key part of that, obviously. And they prioritized the right processes in the right way. I mentioned this in the previous slide, but they had over 127,000 hours of time back to their branches, and with that increased customer satisfaction, they were able to open up new revenue streams. Now, I get it, these are big numbers, but the average ROI of a lot of projects that I've been part of, and you can do your own research and see what RPA has achieved. ROI is distributed pretty equally across organizations that are smaller at scale. So the ROI is there. So up to this point, right, you've learned about how to establish the center of excellence. You've learned about the automation journey. You hopefully have a decent kind of base level understanding of how to build out these automations and how to scale up, and even get to that point where you can engage your employees at the ground level to deliver automation and deliver value for you. So with that being said, I did want to quickly bring up how Mutually Human can help. Across the entire kind of automation journey and life cycle, there are a lot of steps. So Mutually Human does offer services across a variety of business needs. Process discovery, process workshop, proof of concept are three that I think can be jumped together. Even we can help you understand where in your organization there might be good opportunities for automation. If once those opportunities are identified, we can help build out your initial automations and help you understand how to prioritize those use cases. We also offer migration support. One of our projects coming up here is a customer that has built over 50 automations in the older version of Automation Anywhere. It's known as V11. So we're helping them upgrade their platform and their existing bot repository to the updated Automation 360 platform. We also offer just bot development services. So, once if we can help you identify initial use cases, help you prioritize them, we can also help you build out these bots and kind of give you a jump start. And we also do COE workshops to help kind of build out your processes, help you understand what kind of documents can bring value to your automation journey. Our goal with any client that we work with is to meet them where their needs are. And we like to say that we don't want to give you a fish, we want to teach you how to fish. We want to make sure that you have the tools needed to successfully deliver RPA and to successfully kind of grow that culture of automation across your organization. So with that, I think we will move on to questions and bring Lori back in here.
Yeah, thanks, Nav. Very, very good. So a couple questions came in during the webinar, but a reminder to those of you out there, if you do have any other questions, feel free to add them into on your right-hand side right now. But Nav, first question here. So if we were to implement RPA and a center of excellence, what are some key challenges or problems we should expect? So what are some key challenges when implementing a center of excellence?
It's a great question, and it's one I've heard many times. The first thing that comes to mind is that there's not enough technical talent helping build out the RPA program. Automation Anywhere and other tools too, they are very simple to use and build out kind of simpler processes, but to really notice an ROI, you have to start targeting a little bit more of the complex processes that are still high volume. And the way to do that is bring people on or train people up to deliver more technical challenges. This is still custom software in a way where we have to make sure that these bots that are being built and delivered have the proper error handling, right? They have the proper logging. You want to make sure that these bots are set up correctly, that you're using version controlling to do that. And those are a lot of concepts that are a little bit more technical for business users. So I would say that's probably the key challenge for establishing that center of excellence, is making sure that you have the technical expertise to kick things off.
Thanks. So one more question in here also. You talked a little bit about ROI at some of the larger companies and how that scales across in smaller organizations. How do you calculate ROI?
So you can do that a couple different ways, but a couple of things. I'll say this: you want to make sure you are taking into account different data points when you are establishing, calculating the ROI. You want to make sure you understand how many processes are being automated, okay? You want to make sure that you know the number of FTEs that are being affected and what percent of daily time is for them is spent on whatever process. And then you want to make sure that you're calculating kind of their salary and compensation with benefits into that as well. Mutually Human, we have our own in-house ROI calculator that we've built out. Then we've helped many clients kind of realize the potential benefits of automation using that. But I'm sure if you did a quick Google search, you'd be able to find kind of some high-level calculators out there as well. So yeah, those are just the key points: making sure that you understand which processes and the number of FTEs affected, and what percent of time they spend doing X process, and making sure that you're calculating their salary and compensation correctly as well. And then I think we had another question as well. The question was, as we find it harder to find talent, RPA is going to be more important for us. Are you seeing companies justifying bringing RPA to decrease headcount? Now that's, I would say, it's a complicated answer to that question. What I will say is we've noticed companies using RPA to reduce the dependency on some, like that example of the bank I told you earlier, where their offshore resources weren't able to complete the processes manually, right, leading to the bottleneck onshore. Well, that was a case where this particular client had to use RPA, and it was justified to do so in order to reduce that dependency on offshore processing. It's totally going to depend on the processes and depend on the business itself, right? Because we want to get to that point where we're giving a lot of, we want to use RPA to give employees time back to work on more customer facing, more analyst related, maybe process re-engineering skills. You can definitely put yourself in a position where you're reskilling your current workforce and making them feel more valued. And many times you'll see that the return is there. So I'm not sure if that answers the question clearly, but I think it is a very complicated question. But to that point, RPA can be used to get more done with less. And I think I will leave it at that. So Lori, I'll bring you back in here to kind of go over some finishing items.
Yeah, so just as a reminder, we recorded the webinar. We'll send out an email with that link. So feel free to share it with any colleagues. When you close out of this, you'll be prompted to complete a survey. We would really appreciate any information you can give to, again, help us continue to provide valuable information. Also, in that survey, if you're interested in continuing the conversation around creating a center of excellence and implementing automation at your organization, please reach out. There's an area in that survey that you can opt in to be contacted for more information. Once, for those of you that have completed the survey, again, we will be entering you into a drawing for Amazon gift cards. So we really appreciate you taking time. I know everyone has a very busy day, so thank you for taking time out of your day to join us. And thank you, Nav. Great job. Nav Lekhi, Director of Intelligent Automation. His contact information is up there on the screen if you have any follow-up questions. Thanks, everyone. Have a great rest of your day.